The Yoshi series has always been an odd one for me. In 1990, Nintendo released Super Mario World, which became a massive critical and commercial success because it's Super Mario World. Instead of following up the plumber's adventure with another Mario outing, 5 years later, Nintendo released Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, a 2D platformer focused on Yoshi for some reason. But the game sold well and, is cited as one of the best 2D platformers of all time. So yeah, Yoshi's Island would eventually hatch into a spin-off series of egg-centric platformers. These Yoshi games were generally slower paced than 2D Mario titles, but the levels were more focused on exploration and collecting items. Yoshi could also eat enemies, throw eggs, and flutter jump to give himself an extra boost in the air. These unique traits would become staples of the Yoshi series, along with creative visual styles that vary from game to game. But what really makes the Yoshi series so strange to me is how, despite having solid mechanics and being built on the back of the most critically acclaimed platforming franchise ever, Yoshi hasn't left much of an impact other than its initial outing in 1995. Sure, most of the Yoshi platformers are at least pretty solid, but the original Yoshi's Island has still yet to be topped in terms of critical reception. And I think that's because every traditional Yoshi platformer since Yoshi's Island has either tried too hard to emulate the original's genius, or it was Yoshi's Story. Released in 1997 on the Nintendo 64, Yoshi's Story is the direct sequel to the original Yoshi's Island, even being titled Yoshi's Island 64 during development. However, despite it being created by the same team as Yoshi's Island, Yoshi's Story received fairly negative reviews when it first launched in Japan, mainly due to the game's low difficulty and simplicity. But Nintendo did make some slight adjustments to the Western release. Some items would be better hidden, egg blocks would now match the Yoshi's color, and most importantly, critics still ragged on the game. Yoshi's Story just couldn't catch a break. But the reason I'm making this video is because Yoshi's Story was the first game I ever played. I think. It was either this or Super Mario Kart. I don't know, I was like 3. Yes, I do have a lot of nostalgia for Yoshi's Story, but I also haven't played it in about a decade, and I don't think I even unlocked all of the levels. So I want to use this video as an opportunity to reevaluate my opinion of this game. Honestly, I didn't even know Yoshi's Story was so poorly received until somewhat recently. So were the critics right in saying Yoshi's Story is an oversimplified, easy slog of a game, or is it the hidden gem of the Yoshi franchise? One of the main selling points of the Yoshi series has always been aesthetic diversity, with each game having a distinct handmade arts and crafts feel. Yoshi's Story takes the pop-up book approach, with many elements being constructed from cardboard, newspaper, and patchwork. God, I love the Luigi hole. I remember adoring the pop-up book aesthetic as a kid, and now being 20 years older, Jesus Christ, I still think this game looks gorgeous. That is the one thing basically any review of this game will agree on. Yoshi's Story has a wonderful aesthetic. The majority of N64 games these days haven't aged spectacularly well. I still like how a lot of these games look personally, but Yoshi's Story has to be the best looking game on the N64 of all time. It might be a bit of unfair competition given that this is a 2D game on a console dominated by some of the earliest 3D games in the industry, but let Yoshi's Story have this one, goddammit. This pop-up book aesthetic is even woven into the story. One day, Baby Bowser turns Yoshi's Island into a storybook and steals their Super Happy Tree, the source of all happiness on the island. Without the Super Happy Tree, the Yoshis spiral into depression, literally like every single one of them, except for the 6 baby Yoshis that hatch elsewhere on the island. And these newborns plot to stop Baby Bowser by, and I quote, eating fruit and having fun. If only life was that easy. Many of Yoshi's traits that originated in the original Yoshi's Island are retained, such as the flutter jump, egg throwing, and eating various fruits and enemies. However, Yoshi's Story differentiates itself in a few key ways. First, you now have direct control when aiming the egg. You no longer need to wait for the reticle to line up the way you want, and I really like this change. It gives you a bit more control over your character. And speaking of control, Yoshi feels great to maneuver. He's a little slippery, but he can jump absurdly high and has great momentum in the air. This game just feels great to play. Baby Mario was also completely absent, thank God, making Yoshi's Story the dinosaur's first solo platforming outing. Well, kinda, because Yoshi does have a group of friends along for the ride. You can actually choose which Yoshi to play as this time around. And there are even 2 secret unlockable Yoshis, being Black Yoshi and White Yoshi. These 2 even have some unique abilities, such as eggs that explode, and being able to eat spicy peppers without losing health. I don't know, I think the egg exploding is a lot cooler. Health is now displayed using the flower on the top left of the screen. If the flower loses all of its petals, Yoshi dies and is dragged off to Baby Bowser's castle. This scene used to absolutely terrify me as a kid. And for good reason, because the Yoshis don't come back. Yeah, that's right. There is permadeath in this Yoshi baby game. The Yoshis are not characters, they are lives. They are expendable and only one of them needs to make it to the end for you to win the game. But yeah, if your favorite Yoshi dies, it's gone forever. Until you start a new playthrough or find one of the hidden white Shy Guys. The white Shy Guys are basically an extra life, in the sense that they rescue one of your Yoshis, but only if you complete the level without losing it. If you die with the Shy Guy following you, that's it. It won't reappear if you try again. I think this is a very interesting life system that makes rescuing your Yoshis feel earned. Losing a Yoshi feels much more impactful than simply losing a life like in other platformers. Eating fruit is how you progress in Yoshi's Story. Each level is filled with fruit, and once you eat 30 fruits, the Yoshis will grow happier and move on to the next level. There are no end goals like in Yoshi's Island. In fact, the stages loop once you get to the end, meaning you are stuck in a never-ending purgatory until Yoshi eats enough bananas. I think the approach to levels in Yoshi's Story is pretty interesting, and I haven't really seen any other game that follows this format. You just kinda wander around, find fruit at your own pace, and explore. It's kinda like a 2D collectathon of sorts. Not the most difficult game, but it was nice, relaxing fun. Levels are linear, but there are some cool branching paths and secrets to find. There were times I even skipped out on collecting the final piece of fruit because I just wanted to see more of what the level had to offer. And the levels are mechanically diverse, each featuring unique gimmicks, enemies, and themes. Some of my favorites include the Tall Tower, Bone Dragon Pit, and this one just called Frustration. The Tall Tower has these springs that are a ton of fun to bounce off of. You can also ride these leaves, and mastering their controls is incredibly satisfying. This might also be my favorite stage aesthetically. Something about the building block towers always just kinda creep me out for some reason, but like in a good way. Bone Dragon Pit was my favorite level as a kid. You get to fight all these bone dragons, and there's even a few secret 3-headed dragons you can find. And this is like the second level in the game. It's so cool. And Frustration revolves around these rotating wheels. It's very true to its name, but I enjoyed the ever so slightly higher difficulty. Not every level is a winner though. Honestly, I would argue a lot of them are pretty forgettable. Sometimes a level design just feels a bit archaic or arbitrary. And I think this is because levels are less focused on being tightly designed challenges in favor of a more jungle gym design style. And some levels feel really out of place. Let's take Shy Guy Limbo for example. This is level 3 of World 5, which is the water-themed world. Except there is no water in Shy Guy Limbo, and the main gimmick isn't even remotely interesting enough to warrant an entire level dedicated to it. You're just jumping over poles the whole time. This isn't even what Limbo is! And there is very little room for exploration in this level. There was one time I went out of my way to backtrack and hop on these clouds, and there was just nothing to find. The actual water levels are pretty good in this game. Why is Shy Guy Limbo here? And I do have my issues with the game structure. Each world, or page in this case, has 4 levels, and there are 6 pages in the game for a total of 24 levels. This is less than half of what Yoshi's Island had, and you only need to play through 6 levels to complete the game. You don't play all 4 levels on each page in just one playthrough. Instead, you choose 1 level per page. Additionally, not all of the levels are unlocked from the start. Each level has 3 big hearts in it, and for every heart you find, another level will unlock on the next page. For example, if you find 2 hearts during a page 1 level, levels 2 and 3 will unlock on page 2. It's a little bit confusing, but it does encourage exploration and replayability. You basically need to complete the game at least 4 times to experience all of its content. But that also means you have to fight the same exact final boss 4 times, and it's a really easy fight. Okay, let's address the main criticism Yoshi's Story received. The game is easy. And yeah, I don't disagree that the game is easy, because it is. Sure, some of the later levels ramp up the challenge a bit, but because the levels are focused heavily on exploration and fruit collection, I didn't find the easy difficulty to be much of an issue. I wasn't bored playing Yoshi's Story, even though it is quite obviously a game made for babies. However, I do think the game would have benefited from a few more challenging levels after completing every single stage in the game. Challenging bonus content is something a lot of Nintendo platformers do, so I was kinda disappointed there weren't any extra challenges upon completing the game. Again, I don't have any issues with the main levels being easy, but some extra bonus stuff would have been nice given this is something Nintendo has done in the past. But where I do have a problem with the difficulty is with the bosses. Bosses in video games are usually combat challenges that are made to test your skill. But in Yoshi's Story, they are so simplistic that they feel utterly pointless. They can all be easily beaten in less than a minute and follow the traditional hit them 3 times and they're dead rule. Or in the case of the cotton candy guy, you just kinda Matt Stoney him to death.
Gigantic cotton candy challenge. Let's do it.
Baby Bowser is also a bit of an exception because he has 2 phases, but you do have access to the Super Happy Tree right there in the room with you, which gives you a ton of fruit and an invincibility heart. It feels like the game doesn't believe you're good enough to beat the boss on your own. Needless to say, every single boss was a disappointment. But I wouldn't say my overall time revisiting Yoshi's Story was disappointing. Sure, Yoshi's Story isn't Yoshi's Island, but it wasn't trying to be. And it does have some unique ideas I genuinely think are great. It feels good to play, the game is absolutely gorgeous, the music is nice, albeit a bit repetitive because every single song is the same melody, just in a different style. I love how the live system works, death feels way more impactful than in any other Yoshi game. I do wish the bosses were more challenging, that was easily the most disappointing aspect of this game for me. And of course, some of the levels didn't really leave much of a lasting impact, but I did find revisiting Yoshi's Story to be a surprisingly pleasant experience. Is it better than Yoshi's Island? Probably not, but for me personally, I think pretty highly of this game. I think. I totally see why people don't enjoy it. It is really easy and does kinda lack a bit of depth, but even when looking at it more critically for this video, I just thought it was fun. And if you think I only like this game based purely on nostalgia, well, Super Mario Kart is a piece of shit. Not every game needs to be challenging to have value. Some games can just be a nice cozy romp, and that's just kinda what Yoshi's Story is. It's an easy game made for literal babies. And while it didn't leave a mark on the gaming landscape like its predecessor, it definitely left an impact on me. Hey, thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. If you liked it, please feel free to stick around because I am planning on putting out a video at least once a month going forward. I also do a series called Worst of the Wii, where I play and rank terrible Wii games to find out which game is truly the worst of the Wii. Got 4 episodes of that out right now, so if you want to see some absolute trash, please feel free to check it out. I think next month I'm going to be putting out a smaller Worst of the Wii for a game that people have been recommending to me. And then in December, I'm going to be putting out a big holiday-themed Worst of the Wii. So if you have any good winter game suggestions, please leave them in the comments and I'll be sure to check them out. But what do you think about Yoshi's Story? Do you think it's underrated? Do you think it's hot garbage? Please let me know in the comments. I read all of my comments and I try to respond to as many of them as I can. But anyway, once again, thank you so much for watching. Have a good one.